and welcome to the Cognac and Poetry Podcast, the space where unpacking praxis, politics, and poetics happens one intergenerational conversation at a time. I am T.S. Hawkins, and joining me is the super scholarly, sexy Dr. Kimmika Williams-Witherspoon.
Hey there, what's happening? How are you?
Nothing much, just trying to hang right and hang tight. How about yourself?
Trying to be like you, man.
I try. And of course, it goes without mentioning. Okay, the one, the only, Lois Moses. Hey, Lois.
Hello. I'm just trying to keep the balance in between these two phenomenal people, human beings.
He's like, hello, Queen. I'm loving the earrings. I'm loving this. You know, you got my girl Sean Gay hanging just right there.
Yes, you know I do.
So now right there, you got to talk about all your merchandise because
oh yeah, I mean,
all you, right?
I mean, might as well, since, because Lois does those things. You make the jewelry of our ancestors' prolific Black and brown bodies as wearable art. So just tell us a little bit about that before we jump into the nuance of this episode.
Well, this is armor. Be clear about it. That's what it is, armed by design, and that's how it started. Was needing a level of support and protection, and also needing sister to be seen. So this is who decided would come out today, and Zazaki and Fannie Lou.
Hey,
so, and the company is called Armed by Design because that's what it is.
Thank you, Lois. So speaking about Shanghai, we're having our Poetics in Motion, and Kimmika's going to bless us with some poetry. Who's on your mind today?
Well, actually, I found this brother online. His name is Cowain Wadley. I was looking for something in and around dolls, because 'tis the season, and so when I read it, it was really kind of interesting, So I thought I'd share this one. It's called Best Home Little Black Doll. She sat on the shelf, admiring the other dolls. She'd been there for some time, watching the other dolls come and go, the only one not wrapped in plastic. She thought herself ugly. The other dolls were never staying long, the kids and their parents quickly bypassing her, grabbing the dolls wrapped in box and plastic. Although very beautiful, she'd sit and contemplate the worst. Watching the other dolls come and go, the little black doll not wrapped in plastic, she grew resentment, finding the only difference was in how she was made. Her brown skin, her black hair, she so longed to be taken to a loving home. She didn't come with any accessories. The vanity that came with the other dolls, her smile printed across her face. Over time, it became hard for that smile to stay. Often crying when the lights turned off and the store closed. She wanted a home, just like the other dolls. Quickly passed by, hurried over to the register. She longed to be like all the other dolls, watching them all come and go, their hair tied behind their head, all the makeup and accessories sealed in their package. It wasn't until one of the other dolls was returned, damaged, half stuffed into the package, when she spoke to the other doll. She discovered that not all homes are what you think. Seeing how rough she was played with, the rough marks across her face, her hair no longer tied in the package ponytail, it wasn't until then that she realized that the best things come with time. Finding the best home in herself. Beautiful black doll taken home to meet the girl she'd be with forever. Again, Cowain Wadley.
Yes, that
was beautiful.
Yes.
Wow.
Well, this is the season, right? And dolls are, I don't know. I have a really interesting relationship with black dolls. I still have all of my Barbie dolls and my girls' dolls upstairs on the 3rd floor in the attic. I got my first black Barbie doll in 1966. Christy, I remember, she had giant boobies, but she was beautiful. She had like a red afro. It was wonderful. But I have an odd relationship with black dolls because I had 2 girls. And they were only a year and 362 days apart. They're still alive, thank God. But it was so problematic because stores never had more than one black doll when they were coming. And so that whole season of gift giving and doll purchasing was so troubling. I would have to camp out at Kitty City and Toys R Us and like lay on the sales register and give them my phone number. Please, if you get a black doll, it was just crazy. The only place that had black dolls was Chicago. And that's because Chicago was us. But that was the only place. And it was just so crazy. So anyway, this poem made me think of that. And this whole rushing for the season and how special it is when a little girl gets to get a doll that looks like herself.
That part. I didn't realize how difficult it was to get a doll that is reflective of who I look like. Because when my mother got me black dolls, I just thought it was effortless, right? Like anytime she got me a doll, it was black. And anytime like I got a doll that was not black, it's because like her coworker, was like, oh, you have a female identified child. Here's a Barbie, And that's the only reason why I had Caucasian ones in my collection. But like my mom didn't make it seem like it was tumultuous to get a black or brown doll. And so when I got older and was like shopping, for like my colleagues who are having children, right? And then I'm going to the store and I'm just like, wait, I'm so confused. Like, where the dolls at?
Yeah. Why do they all look like that?
Or you gotta like special order them, and or they're only out for a specific time. Or Barbie was doing a thing. It was like a limited edition, but we didn't know Barbie had her friend Sparkella, whatever her name was at the time.
Sparkella.
And so, but it was like limited edition Barbie's friend. And so like, or if I did find a doll at like a random, KB toy store or whatever, it wasn't even Barbie. It was like an off brand. It was like, well, they had random parts they put together, they made them brown.
And it didn't bend and move like our Barbie, right?
It was this one. They were like big. They were like big Frankenstein. Remember they were
like this.
Exactly.
But I found it so weird. Like my mom just made it seem like like not that was that like she was perpetuating anything. You know what I mean? But it was just like, well, I'm black. I get a black doll. You go to the store, you get a black doll. And then when I got older, I was like, okay, where did she get these dolls? Because clearly they're not where I'm supposed to be.
I'm telling you, you had to be strategic. You had to put on face paint. You had to do all kinds of things to find black dolls, especially to find more than one. It was so this new generation where you could special order. This is new. Everybody my age or above, you literally had to camp out. They just didn't make them. They didn't make them. And so when you had all those doll crazes like Cabbage Patch and all that kind of stuff, you had to really be a ninja to find a doll that looked like you.
And don't get into it. I grew up in the era, like, in the 80s. It's very hot time. We had My Buddy, Kid Sister. We had the Cabbage Patch. Barbie was an astronaut and, a beauty extreme home makeover. Like, Barbie was doing a lot, someone who had no money. She had all of it. I had no jobs, had all the money. Like, it's crazy. So I came up in the doll boom, I guess, if you will.
Yeah, it was Renaissance. It was Renaissance.
But, I had to look this up a little bit. And actually, there was a company called the National Negro Doll Company that was actually formed in 1909 that was in response to really fighting racist imagery of African Americans post-enslavement that lasted until about 1950. And then they said that there was 1915, excuse me. Then they said there was another sort of boom with a Baby Nancy. I've never heard of this, but it was a Black California company and was in response to the Watts Rebellion.
Mm-hmm.
But what was interesting was the problem was the distribution, which is always a problem. So it's
Right.
not that we can't make it, it's getting other people to buy into contracting to sell it.
Right. And that was before the internet and having access to, materials from one side of the world to the other. If it was made in, I don't know, Idaho, you didn't know about it in New York City. And so that was also the problem as well. I have an image of me, in fact, it's in the other room, 2 or 3 years old, carrying a black doll. But I also have an image of me at that age with a white doll. So I don't have that one in a frame. But it's terrible, but it's true. So that they were there, but they were so few and far between. And just with Barbie, you couldn't find a black Ken. It took forever for them to make a black Ken doll, and then when they did, his hair was made of felt, so he always got lint in it, and it looked like his afro was like gray. That was just, oh my God, so many issues.
And I don't understand. Okay, when I say I don't understand, I clearly understand, but you understand what I'm trying to understand. Okay, cool.
But we understand.
Yeah, I don't understand how distributors, Mattel and them, be like, oh, well, this is not gonna sell. Well, you don't know if it's not gonna sell until you put it on the shelf. And so, what makes you think I want to walk around with a blonde hair and blue eyes all the time? When they say, oh, I don't think it's gonna sell, what they're really saying is our white constituency is not going to buy these dolls. But we can force white dolls on everybody, and we should just move on.
That's problematic. That's problematic,
right?
Because I wanted to buy the black Captain America doll, and it was sold out within hours. And I'm pissed because I've tried everywhere in the world to order one, get one, buy one, and Disney and Marvel, they're just not doing it. And I'm throwed. I am throwed off. Okay,
like what's up with that? Like, why do we have to be the limited edition or like the niche need? Like we've clearly shown you the only reason why you're in business is because of the black dollar.
Right.
So make sure the products reflect back to us the money that we're spending anyway.
But then we have to ask the question, is it really just about the money, or is it also about perpetrating certain images and having people buy into a level of internalized racism because they don't see themselves represented in a way that's substantive? And that's what I argue is the real, because once again, they'll sacrifice a certain amount of money to make sure that, because quite frankly, internalized racism is working. As long as you continue to put, white dolls and then paint the black dolls, paint them, as opposed to really,
it's real.
Real, right, exactly. Then what you do is you perpetuate, the internalized racism.
Ideal beauty. You perpetuate the expectation of blackness, and then you teach our little young individuals, our young humans, that the only thing that's accessible is whiteness.
Right. And my husband and I were talking last night about, talking about the doll experience. And so one of the things we were saying is, you have the, the dark skin to the light skin dolls. Well, what if you did a doll experiment where you had Karen and you said, Karen is Karen calls the cops on black people. Is she good? Or Aisha, who's the first responder, is she good?
So the doll test reimagined.
Reimagined so that, So when you think about how it's put together, which feeds into what we have been taught, which is really about Stockholm syndrome and PTSD, because we're talking about, particularly during the era of our parents, we're talking about great grandchildren of enslaved people. I'm just saying we need to reimagine. I'm thinking Karen is not the doll, doll that we want to give our children.
Has the doll test been redone since its first initiation? Has it been redone?
Yes.
Yeah,
pretty much the same. Yeah, go ahead.
Same response. I mean, it's routinely redone every so many years. But I'm not so sure changing the narrative would change the outcome, because all around our young people, as they're growing and watching, PBS or all of these commercials and cartoons, they're still being fed a diet of whiteness that that they're internalizing even if they're not aware of it. And I think that even if we had a Becky and a Karen, mine is Becky, so that that Becky steals all your eligible African American men, and Karen, even if you did that narrative.
So, but the human that runs our boards in the back has asked us to kind of just break down the doll test.
Okay.
So
go ahead, Lois. You
I mean, and that's what I found interesting is that the doll test was actually used by, and let me just say, Mamie Clark and Kenneth Clark, because Mamie was actually not given the credit during the use while it was used in Brown versus Board. And but understand their test was very specific in the sense that they were really looking at how what I can say that how racism is inherently an American institution, and school segregation inhibited the development of white children as well as Black children. And so, but how the influence of race, color, and status on self-esteem. And that was what the test was all about. But inherently in the Brown versus Board, how they used it to, Kimmika, come in here. They used it to, because they used it. They did not use, first of all, they went to Kenneth and Mamie Clark and asked about using the test. And ultimately they said that they were not litigators and they weren't, they were
scientists. They were trying to find out the ways in which the brain works and that stereotype affects our behaviors. So that was part of the impetus for the test. I'm sorry, go ahead.
On YouTube, they can watch like clips of how it was done. And some of it is very, very disturbing and actually sad. All they do is they put a white doll on the table and they put a Black doll on the table, and they ask these little young babies, which doll do they like better, and whether they were white or whether they were Black or Hispanic, Latino, Latinx, whatever. The children said they like the white doll better, and then when asked why do you like the white doll better, they were like, well, because the white doll is good.
Right.
It's a doll. The doll has done nothing but been placed on the table, and a value system has been added to this doll that the white doll is good. And when they asked them, what about the Black doll? They said, well, the Black doll is bad.
Right.
Yeah, but the psychology underneath it was, even in segregation, racism seeps in. And so ultimately what you have is, because that was the whole argument around Brown versus Board, is that segregation was inherently unequal. That was what they were trying to. So even in this segregation, racism seeps in. So as a result, they're, separated. You still have young Black children who don't value themselves, that value cultures that are not even represented in their community. So, for me, that's the most important part of this, which is why in the end, integration was not the answer. Although that was what we got, even though Brown versus Board was desegregation. And they say that desegregation is a legal concept and integration is actually a social construct. So, it's so much more complicated than just saying, well, separate is inherently unequal, so we need to bring them together. We're already toxified by the racism virus. Now you want to put us in the cesspool so that we end up being, I guess it will be permanent.
Well, but we have to be fair. We have to be honest, I guess, that there were a cadre of integrationists who, because they had been excluded for so long, or because we have been excluded for so long, the integrationists honestly believe that blending together would create a new kind of reality, that it would even the playing field. What we didn't realize, or what the integrationists didn't realize, is that there were some benefits to being in a community that loved and cared for you, that we would lose once we began to blend. I want us to remember that the integration social policy that was the result of Brown versus Board was what they believed would heal, would satisfy the dictates of the unequal. But no one ever thought about, let's give everybody the same resources.
And that's what,
would be the answer. No one ever thought that about that.
Novel concept here.
Except for us. I mean, that was, and the other thing is that what they didn't also, and you touched on it, what they didn't talk about either was that in an environment where we were segregated, where we had the resources and the social cultural environments that empowered us, that we would pick the black doll. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Because if your teacher and your the first lady of your church, or your minister, or your doctor, or your dentist, if they all looked like you, then all of a sudden that's teaching you a different ethic about blackness. But once you move into that integrationist space, and there's stark contrast between white and black and white, then that's when the media and popular culture, they can fill the gaps with all of this perception of blackness that pushes that black is dark and black is bad and black is scary and all of that, and they buy into it, not even knowing that they're being taught that through the cartoons, through the various ways in which we look at Donald Duck versus Daffy Duck.
And think about this. If we, I always say, let's take race out of the picture. So let's say that we asked the great-grandchildren of Holocaust survivors, and we wanted them to pick whether they like the Jewish doll or the German doll. The fact is, if Jewish people had not gone to the reculturalization program, they might feel the same way and be picking the the German doll. You know what I'm saying? So, but I mean, think about that. Take out the, and because it really comes down to and that's why I call it reculturalization program, in terms of knowing and being reminded of who you are and loving that, and immersed in your culture and having your culture be seen as not only valuable but the pinnacle, something that you should want to embrace.
Yeah, I mean, I think too, like, folks just want to see themselves reflected back to them.
Yes.
Period.
In a way that says that they're valuable.
Yeah, in a healthy way.
In a healthy way to say, exactly.
Whether we're talking about a doll, whether we're talking about TV, whether we're talking about music, like the things that influence our everyday. Yes, we want to have a breadth of knowledge about what's going on. I mean, if you're being true and an effective global citizen, right? You care about what's going on. And you also want you to be reflected back to you in some way.
Yes.
Right, in some way. And then, I mean, even though he's been, bucked and mired and did some things he wasn't supposed to, we still can't negate Bill Cosby set a tone with the Huxtables. You, on a personal level, you can feel however you want to feel. But Black folks wasn't really out here thinking we can be doctors, we can be lawyers, we can have a whole family, we don't have to live in poverty. We can, we can have some good times on the flip side. So he set a tone, a cultural tone. And then from that opened up a door for young folks thinking that they can go to college, in a different world. Seeing it's like, oh, okay, we can learn more about our stuff, who we are. We just want to see us reflected back to us, not always having to be gangbangers and, having hoochie coochie skirts on and, showing our unis and our nanas all the time just to make a way out of no way. We want to see ourselves positively reflected back to us. And sometimes it starts just as small as going to the store and being able to look at a shelf and see a cadre of beautiful hues and not all alabaster Barbies, one chocolate Barbie, one cinnamon Barbie, and one racially ambiguous Barbie that just kind of sets the tone for everybody. You can't even say it's Asian, it's Middle Eastern, whatever. It's racially ambiguous, but it's white enough and brown enough so you feel
it's
seen.
othered. It's othered. Yeah, and you're right. And I think we need to underline that Bill Cosby provided that with the Huxtables for a new generation. But pre-Brown versus Board, we knew that you could be doctors and lawyers. Excuse me?
Reconstruction. No, I'm just coming with
but we knew that because that was what we saw in our communities.
Absolutely.
In Tulsa, Oklahoma, in Harlem, in Philadelphia, in 7th Ward, we saw that in our communities because we were segregated and they could not live with white folks. So the doctor and the lawyer and the police officer and the teacher and the minister, they lived in the same communities with the hoochie mama and the drug dealer and the wino. We don't even have winos anymore, but the wino, we were all together in the same community. So our children knew we had role models to look to for both the positive sides of life and then the side of life where you had to make a way out of no way.
Make a way out of no way. Both are valid. It's just that when you see whiteness on TV all the time, it's like, well, I want to be a doctor because Doogie Howser. Nah, son. You know what I mean? Like it's that difference in what I'm talking about.
Right. Absolutely. It's generational. But I want to just say that before Bill Cosby did it with the Huxtables and the spinoff, A Different World, we had Oscar Micheaux, who was doing it for us, in the 1900s, in the early 1900s. We had films with black cowboys and doctors and detectives and the whole gamut, so that there were always those individuals pushing that message. They got silenced with at around the same time that this first doll experiment happens, in the 1950s. And so our children start picking the image of otherness because they're children are quick. They can come in a room and know who likes who and who doesn't. And the children they're quick. They're little people, and so they quickly knew who had the most power in the room.
Yeah.
And that's the thing we have to address. We have to change the power dynamic so all of the power is equally distributed, and children know that they have a chance at it.
Yeah, because we got the children thinking the kidnapper is better than us. You know what I'm saying? But I mean, that's essentially
the imagery. I was like, what?
I know. I had to kind of take a second to think about that. The kidnappers are better than us. Well, yeah.
But that's what. That's essentially.
Yeah.
I think that was a good one, Lois. It was just pause. I had to pause for a second.
Me too. It was an interesting metaphor, though, that you use with the Holocaust of children. Holocaust survivors. We do know that during the Holocaust, the Germans were exterminating young children as well. And we have the poetry and artwork of some of those children who lost their lives. And I never thought about it, but I'm imagining living in that traumatic circumstance that if given the same test, they would have chosen the German doll. And so we have to remember that our children are still living in a traumatic.
That's PTSD. That's my point. Stockholm Syndrome, PTSD.
And that's why even though they redo the tests every few years, usually it's every 10 or 20 years, the outcome is always the same. But because our traumatic circumstance has not changed.
And that's the bottom line.
And sometimes, parents do pass on certain traumas inadvertently.
Well, yeah, and that's it. That's why I say the epigenetics. I mean, we know, and unless the circumstances change, what we're still dealing with is, no, we have not been. We've been assimilated, not re-inculcated in our cultural truth of who we are.
Yeah,
and and we all dealing with it, to different extents, because we know, as I've said, that we are the best of the worst. You know what I'm saying? In these institutions. So as a result, we know we are working. We got the racism virus on us as well because of, because we spend our lives in the institution. All three of us very clearly have spent our lives in these institutions. So we are every day trying to deconstruct and decolonize our own souls to the extent that we can.
You said this, and I had to pause again. So I'm sitting here pausing behind my glasses. So we have been assimilated and never really integrated. And we got to say that again. We've been assimilated, but never really integrated. So that the results of Brown versus Board, it failed because of that what you just said. We, instead of giving us equal access of a blended world where we all coexist as equals,
represent.
We've been put out into a world and told, in order to succeed, we've got to look and act and be like this individual here, like this doll.
And so if you go back, you think about Plessy when he got on that train. They said, "Don't say nothing, because don't say nothing, Plessy, because once you start to speak, he didn't have the code switching back then." Right. So we're gonna try this experiment, Plessy, but don't say nothing, and then don't tell them your name either. So it's wow, what a strange world we live in.
In a strange world.
Well, I mean, it's sad. I mean, every time when you go on Google, audience members, please take a look at it on YouTube, the test itself, and it is incredibly sad, and it's heart-wrenching, because we understand it. That's why it hurts so badly. But we also know that we haven't given our young people the tools to come up out of those dark and tainted places. And the tools is the conversation that we're having now. The tools is more education. The tools is an understanding of the strategies behind some of these practices that we have to endure and move past. And then back to the poems. Well, that was actually from another show, but we have to perform revolutionary acts with our young people, right? Yeah. With the young people that are within our sphere. That take one, teach one is real, and it was part of our ethic when we were in segregated communities. Yeah. Now that we're in these assimilated communities, we have to reach back to our epic memory and re-embrace those tools, those idioms, those proverbs and adages that made us safe and secure. And take one, teach one. Go out and tell somebody about this test. Tell them about the strategy about it. Tell them why they can't find a black doll on a shelf, or what it means when you finally see one. So that I buy everything black. My brother just yelled at me yesterday. I've got so many black Santa Clauses in my basement. Well, now they keep telling Kimmy, you can't get another one. Yes, I can. If I see one, I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna buy it, because first I'm teaching 2 lessons: that there's a market for blackness, but then I'm also teaching this is how we should people our homes. You should see yourself on the walls of every home where a person of color lives. If you don't see representation of yourself when you walk into that home, you need to walk right back out, because more than likely they cannot cook some collards. Right?
but and remember, if we got 5-year-olds picking the white doll, we know that somewhere before that they have been exposed to something. And I'm just going to make a suggestion. White Jesus. Oh, excuse me. Ooh, yeah. But they have been exposed
and just drop white Jesus. And
I'm saying, so if by 5 years old, if they're picking that, they have been exposed, and particularly if they're in a segregated society, to these constructs that already say that what is good does not look like you. And I tell you, but in Brown versus Board, they used a limited conversation around the experiment, because as I was reading about the experiment, they were looking at the different impact and how children responded in different states. And so at one point, there was a southern state where they showed the little boy, and this is from an article. They showed him the picture. He said, "Which one looks like you?" And he pointed to the black doll. He said, "That's a nigga. I'm a nigga." And then there was, in Massachusetts, they said that they showed some children, did the experiment with them, and they ran out of the room because there was the pain and the terror. They couldn't even answer the question. So I'm saying that it's much deeper systemically how this affects us on multiple levels than when we would be told. It's very simple that all black children pick the white doll, and that's across the board how it's experienced. And we know that's not true because we're not a monolith, and not only that, but children are little humans.
They are little humans, and not saying that everyone would. I mean, I personally, to quote Issa Rae, I'm voting for everybody black. Like, no ifs, ands, and buts about it. Everybody black. And so that's that. Moving forward, when folks were setting up for the holidays here in Philadelphia, to me it's still called the Gallery, but I think now it's like Markets on East on Market, something like that. They had
Fashion district.
Okay, sure. They had a black Santa, and let me tell you this. I get really tired of everybody saying, "Oh, it's not about race. Stop making things about race, X, Y, and Z." When the Alabaster families saw that the Santa was a chocolate Santa, they took their babies out of the line and did not do anything to get a picture with Santa. Man, you for years,
we have been doing it.
Folks been sitting on a trained white lap, hoeing.
And some of those babies screaming to high hell because that's the first time they've been that close to a white man, right? So that we've done it for years.
And so like we're like, oh, I'm not racist, and you can't say I'm racist. It's more implicit bias. Don't word color me. Don't do that. You took your family out of line because the Santa was chocolate.
But see, we mad at them. But wait a minute. But my thing is that. But we're mad at, my thing is I'm mad at us that we went and sat on, that we didn't, because, in the end but they want,
in the 1950s, there was no choice.
They want to be, no, I agree. But I'm saying that they want, what they're saying is that we want our children to be represented based on their reality. So I'm saying now that we know better, we have to do better in the sense that we have to do the same thing.
But see, some of us don't know better, and that's why it's the take one, teach one. There's a whole bunch of our community that still believes that integration is working, and we first we have to tip them to what Lois just said. You aren't really in integration; you're in assimilation. So that's first. But the changing the narrative has to be part of it, but also elevating the you that you are. It has to be part of it too. So again, nothing is in my house that doesn't represent my history and where I come from, who I am.
And
boom, drop the mic.
Nicole Hannah-Jones talks about in the opening of the book now, she talks about the national memory and how a lot of what this CTR is, or TRT, excuse me, it should be
critical race theory.
Yes, but a lot of what this is about in terms of the pushback is really keeping control of the national memory, which is connected with history in terms of how this country wants not only to be seen, but how they want people to think. So, which
control the narrative.
Absolutely,
national memory is a lie.
And they're still the winners, so they still, in their estimation, get to write the story.
Absolutely. The African adage is, if lions were the winners, there would be no hunter stories. Well, okay, then we need to now put lion stories out there, and that's what we've been doing. We've been telling the stories of the lions and the tigers and the bears, and the hunters are pissed off, right? They're buying more weaponry, but I'm still going to tell the story of the lions and the tigers and the bears
all day. All day. Like I don't like for me, I don't understand how people get in their feelings. Like, sorry to any 5-year-olds who may be listening. I'm pretty sure you're not, but I'm about to ruin Christmas. He ain't real, so he can be black, he can be Mediterranean, he can be Asian, he can be blue, he can be purple, he can be green. Okay, he can be a sea monster. Santa ain't real, no way. Get over it. Get over it.
There's going to be a whole lot of parents that are pissed off with us right now.
Yes. And you know what? Should I keep going? Should I keep ruining? Ain't no Easter Bunny. Ain't no Tooth Fairy. Should I keep it real?
Yeah. But first of all, bunnies don't lay eggs. So let's start, with science. Okay. Let's start there.
We're talking about science.
They are mammals. The eggs are inside.
Since we ruining traditions here, let's keep it moving.
I still think, and this is, this all started because I was pissed off about the Black Captain America. When, we finally got a brother representing the, Captain America. They've got a doll. I want the doll in my collection because I'm trying to do my whole Schomburg thing. I've started my own museum. I want the doll.
Yes.
So, so to the manufacturers, stop it. We support you. If we pull back our dollar, your whole industry goes under. And right now we are demanding equity in the ways in which you present us, period. There's no additional conversation needed. If you want me to spend my money on your products, then you need to represent me well.
Yeah.
Ta-da!
I say.
And so as we hit that, because we rooting for everybody Black here on this podcast. I have some little friends I bought me. One of my little friends, this one right here, she's a little raggedy. She's been through some things, but she's my favorite. This, I don't know if y'all remember the children's book series. It was called Addie.
Yes.
Addie is I don't know if they've done more books, but she was the only Black girl at the time in the American Girl doll series. They did Addie wrong. They did her wrong. She had no dresses, no shoes, no brush. Like, it's okay.
Is that Addie?
Yes, that's Addie.
Is that Addie?
No, this is the doll that Addie used to carry. Why? Because you could not get the Addie doll. They had Samantha, they had Kelly, and so when they dropped Addie, people who were in the know bought up all the Addies, so I couldn't get an American Girl doll Addie doll. So my mom and my uncle made a concession and got me her little rag doll that she carried. So this is her. And
well, at least Addie had a black doll.
I have these collectibles that my sister says is very scary.
Ooh, what were they called? The newborns. But they had another name to it. What was it?
It was part of the Cabbage Patch series, but there was a different one. It was like the real life. They came with a birthday.
Yeah, and the bottle that they could drink. And yes, I have mine too. They're downstairs. It's terrible.
So this is another one, and then I have them all. They're on my shelf, but I can pull them off my shelf. We have this one right here.
Ooh.
We have the same haircut.
I know. I was about to say, you guys look alike.
Wait a minute, did it close its eyes?
Yes, when you laid them down, they would close their eyes. Yeah.
Some of them. Yeah. I'm stuck to her.
I was not a doll person, so I like stuffed animals, but I was not a doll person.
So these are all they're now collectibles now. I think her birthday is still on her. They have the thing, like they just came from the hospital.
Yes, right. You got to hold on to them, sweetie. Hold on to them.
It's called Newborn. You were right.
Yeah, the newborns. Yeah.
It's got chunky legs and everything. Oh.
Yeah, because I got chunky legs. So yes, these are all my friends. So I want to share those with y'all, my collectibles. And my sister walked into my house and she's like, they're scary. And see, this is what happens. Well,
I don't want to get up, but I'm going to get up and go get one of my rag dolls.
Please do.
That's Sam. Yes, and then my rag dolls.
No. Oh.
I have so many more, but again, I'm not even kidding. I am trying to do my own Schomburg thing. I am collecting our history because I know that it's important for the ones that come behind me that they have access to it, and they always do everything in limited edition, including our books and our portraits, our paintings. So my house. My youngest daughter tells people she was raised in a museum. My house is a museum.
It is. It's fabulous.
Into your house. I coach.
Yes. And we need to make sure you have archive. We need to do once COVID slows down. We need to do.
We need to do inventory.
Oh yeah, we need to do photos, and I'll come over with the camera. We need to take videos and photos of all the stuff you have too.
I mean, it's terrible. Charles Bloxon gave me a mask, and now I think the last time I counted them, I'm 89 or 90 masks in, just in masks. I mean, I live in a museum, and so I've got the Black Santas for your boom boom. I mean, if you want a Black Santa, I got Black Santa.
The human on our boards says one of these. So for folks looking for black and brown dolls, anything except, for the alabaster persuasion, Essence recently came out with an article that gives like the top 15 places where you can buy cultural, ethnic specific dolls. Some of them, when I was going through the list, some of them are clearly like Etsy, so it's black owned to, black buyer, which I think is beautiful. But if you go to essence.com, they have a whole section devoted to where you can find black dolls. And
can I just give a shout out to we have two incredible black doll makers right here in the city, and that is Pat McLean and Tiffany Dean. They are making amazing dolls and custom made dolls, and we'll put their information up because I just give a shout out to, we got to support our sisters.
That's right.
And this is a doll by Pat McLean. She's a mermaid, and she looks like me.
That was like you. I love it. And to keep on with the tradition of, keeping everything black, rooting for everybody black, we're going to have Lois Moses hit us up with a new epic memory. And today we're going to talk about Georgia Louise Harris Brown. So I'm looking to learn more about her.
Georgia Louise Harris Brown. Georgia Brown was born June 12, 1918. She is considered to be the second African-American woman to become a licensed architect in the United States. She was also the first African-American woman to earn a degree in architecture from the University of Kansas in 1944. Brown was the only African-American member of the chapter of Chicago Alpha Alpha Gamma, Female Architects and Allied Women Professionals. Brown was born in Topeka, Kansas, and showed an artistic and mechanical aptitude at an early age. She worked on cars and farm equipment with her older brother and was interested in painting. In 1938, she moved to Chicago and enrolled in classes at the Armour Institute of Technology, where she also took flying classes from one of the female pilots at a black aviation club, pursuing a passion that continued throughout her life. Brown started working in the Chicago office of an African-American architect in 1945 and became a licensed architect on July 19, 1949. In 1953, she left for Brazil because opportunities for advancement were limited by her race, and in Brazil she felt there would be fewer racial boundaries to her success. She learned to speak Portuguese, and in 1954 she opened her own interior design firm and obtained her Brazilian architectural license in 1970. In Brazil, Brown worked on several significant buildings and projects, including a large complex in Oaxaca and later another owned by Pfizer Pharmaceutical Corporation. She also designed a Jeep plant and a shipping facility for Siemens.
That's right, all day. We root for everybody black. We want to thank everyone for joining us. And as usual, when you continue on with your day, we want to wish you peace, prosperity, and poetics. Love y'all. Bye.